Hey, hi, hello, and welcome back to another bookish video. Today, we're taking on some of my physical TBR. So on my bookshelf, this entire shelf, and a few books sitting on top are all physical books I own and have not read. And I am working on reading more of those by picking randomly one of these balls, which tells me what book to read next. So not too long ago, using my TBR picker, I picked out 4 new books that I'm going to read. In fact, I posted a short not too long ago showing picking these 4 books. Let's see what we get. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 1 is In 5 Years. Number 2 is River, Sing Me Home. Number 3 is Drowning. Last but not least, number 4. All Our Shimmering Skies. These will be the next 4 books I'm reading from my physical TBR, so I will tell you this before we jump into all of it. One of these books was a 2-star flop, and one of these books was a 5-star win. So come along with me, and over the course of a week, we will read through all 4 of these books, and I will tell you what I think of all 4 of them. Let's jump in. So I've reached about the 25% mark. I just passed page 100 of All Our Shimmering Skies, so I thought this would be a great opportunity to pause and tell you a little bit about what's going on and what I'm thinking. I have been sitting outside and just enjoying my book on this Super Bowl Sunday, so we'll see how far I get with it today. So it starts with Molly. Molly is a young girl. We later find out she's 12, about to turn 13, and her mother is saying goodbye to her. I'm assuming based off of the descriptions of the fact that she's skin and bones and pale, she was probably pretty sick. And her mom tells her, always look to the sky. That's where wonderful things and gifts come from. And that seems to be something that's going to kind of carry throughout the book. In fact, the very last thing her mother tells her is to look at the sky and keep looking and don't look away. And as she's saying that, the mom kind of backs away and disappears. And when the girl finally looks down, there's this gift, which happens to be this heirloom that has this cryptic kind of poetry on it. And Molly is very into poetry and starts to kind of figure out what those poems mean. Also, at the same time, Molly and her entire family are grave diggers. So her mom and her, during this whole scene, are preparing a grave. Later on, Molly continues to dig graves. Her uncle seems to be robbing said graves and just not a good person. In fact, kind of all the people in the town talk about how this family is cursed because of their ancestors. Molly seems to be the exception. After mom passes away, it's just her and her dad is drunk constantly. There was also one chapter about a pilot, about a Japanese pilot, and a little bit about his history. It was just a single chapter so far, so I'm assuming we're going to circle back to it. And then the very last chapter I read, I'm starting to see the glimmers of the historical fiction pop in. So this book takes place in Australia, and she is hanging out with an older friend, and they come across this crest, and they see all of these U.S. destroyer warships sitting out in the water. And the boy says something along the lines of, the Japanese are going to start attacking us soon, it's coming. So that's kind of where we are now. It's just been getting to know Molly, who's a very inquisitive, bright girl who seems to kind of be walking away from the family tradition of being bad people, guessing the things that are going to come from the sky aren't going to be so good, seeing as we had that one chapter of a Japanese pilot. And we know that war is coming. So it's going to be interesting. My guess is this is going to turn dark and adventurous in the next few chapters as we dive more into the war aspect of it, because it definitely seems to be right on the cusp. So far, I'm enjoying it, but I do feel like the last 100 pages probably could have been 20 pages. As a reader, I'm ready for it to pick up. I'm ready for the next stage of this book. So I'm going to sit out here, enjoy some more of this good weather, and see what happens next. Well, I wanted to pop on and update you guys, but someone else seems to think it's time to play. So we'll do our best here. It is a gloomy, rainy, yucky day, so the lighting is less than ideal. Can I talk to the camera for a minute? Oh my goodness. I wanted to update you guys a little bit. Last night was the Super Bowl, and I love the commercials, but I had zero interest in either of the teams, so I didn't get a chunk done. I'm at the halfway point, and I wanted to let you guys know a little bit about what's going on because it is not what I expected at all. So I told you about Molly, who's this little 12-year-old gravedigger living with drunk father and an uncle who robs graves. So, you know, great family elements. So everything comes to a head with her family, and at the same time, everything in World War II is coming to a head in Australia. So as she's fighting with her father and her uncle, all these Japanese planes come over them and just start bombing everyone and everything. So all at once, it kind of became a family drama mixed with historical fiction. And so one thing leads to another, and Molly is on her own now, and she decides that she is going to go on a treasure hunt, essentially. They have a family member named Longcoat Bob, who supposedly had this long-lost treasure found off in the middle of nowhere. That's her plan. And along the way, she meets up with Greta, who's slightly older and an aspiring actress, and somehow or another Greta's like, I'm coming with you. So the town's getting bombed, but like honestly that's one scene of this, because then they're off in the jungle like searching for this treasure, and so there's very little pieces of it that are connected to the historical fiction part until this Japanese pilot flies overhead and sees them and bails in a parachute and ends up walking with them. And yeah, it's really interesting because so Molly's young enough and naive enough, she's like, oh, another gift from the sky, this pilot, we can trust him. It's okay that he's Japanese, and the Japanese just bombed everything. And the older girl, Greta, is like, we need to get out and run away from this Japanese person. And meanwhile, the Japanese person is only speaking Japanese. So basically, you've got just some great communication. You've got not speaking English, too young to understand, and one potentially older rational person. And so now, yeah, they're in the jungle looking for this treasure, and that's the adventure that's going on. Not what I expected. I'm enjoying it. I don't get 5-star vibes right now, but I'm enjoying it. And yeah, my goal is to finish it in the next day or so, and I'll update you guys there. So I just finished reading all of our Shimmering Skies. Unfortunately, this one was not a win for me. I'm kind of in between a 2 or a 3-star, and I was trying to think of the best way to describe this, and I know this is going to sound weird because it's a historical fiction book, but it almost reads a little like a fantasy. Like in my mind, I was picturing this as The Wizard of Oz, even though there's no fantastical elements of it, but there's a quest and there's side characters you pick up along the way. I barely count this as historical fiction. So yeah, I'm unfortunately gonna probably be landing at about a 2.5 stars or so for this one, which is not the best way to start this reading experience, although I will say of the 4 I was gonna read, this one was kind of the one I was the least excited for. So hopefully it's just going to go up from here. I believe I just got Drowning as an audiobook, so I think I'm going to start Drowning and listen to it while I make myself some lunch. And we'll see how it goes. The first book that I read by this author was a 5-star read for me, so we're going to hope this one turns it around. Let's jump in and find out.
A long line of failures. It is the final attempt and is not expected to succeed. In aviation, the emergency landing of an aircraft on water is called a ditching. Chapter 1.
So I have been flying through Drowning, so I figured I needed to update you guys. I am on page 123. I'm about at the halfway mark already, even though I just started this book earlier today. I love this picture, so I wanted to show it. Right in the front cover, kind of says it all. It starts the very first chapter scene, an airplane going down, and it ends up in the ocean. And their first step is let's get off the plane. And then they start to see all the fuel building up, as well as the engine looks like it's about to blow. So this one man, Will, is an engineer, and he jumps up and says, "We need to stop, close the plane right now. No one should get out." And about 12 people listen. And so these 12 people end up inside this plane. You also have Will's daughter, along with several other characters that the author introduces you to. And just as they close the doors, as they expected, massive explosions erupt, and the plane begins to sink before eventually stopping somewhere in the middle of the ocean. In a very weird twist of fate, Will's soon-to-be ex-wife is part of a team that's hoping to help rescue them. It's action-packed. A lot of the chapters, it actually says like how long they've been under and also how much oxygen they have left. So like most recently it said at 2 p.m., 1 hour and 59 minutes after impact, approximately 4.5 hours of oxygen inside the plane. So this book is going to have to wrap up in 4.5 hours. We're going to have to spend a few more hours reading tonight because I've got a feeling this one is going to be finished in the very near future. I love a book that makes me not want to keep going, but need to keep going. I don't think I have a choice right now. It's a page turner. I am going to, real quick, trigger warning as a mom, and I know I've got other moms watching. The characters that are stuck in the plane, you learn a little bit about their backstory, and one of Will's backstory pieces is the fact that they lost a child. So I do want to throw that trigger warning out there because it was tough for me to read as a parent, but it is not a huge focus of the book. So be warned, I got to go read some more. I'll update you soon. So I am back to give you another update. It's actually been 2 days. My son came down with a stomach bug, and then I came down with a stomach bug, and then my husband, and it's been fun. But we're all on the mend. The bright side is I have been able to keep reading. The downside is I haven't updated you guys. So I want to start by updating you on Drowning. I picked this book up 2 days ago, and I finished it the day I picked it up. This, much like their first book, Falling, is action-packed, beginning to end. One thing that I really loved about this book is it really kind of had almost a romance element to it because you have this one couple. The husband is on a plane with their daughter, the plane that ends up submerged in water, and the wife happens to be one of the people working with the scuba divers to help save the people that are on this plane. And the husband and wife are actually in the process of getting divorced, I guess, or separated because they're dealing with the trauma of losing a child. It's also like, how are they coping as a family from this trauma, and what does that look like moving on? The author, TJ Newman, I feel like was in my head and answering every question I had in the way I wanted it answered. Even like the way characters reacted to some people making it, not making it. And it's like I was rooting for characters, and the characters I rooted for had the outcomes I wanted them to have. Now that I've read Drowning and Falling by TJ Newman, he's made the list. I will be reading books that this author comes up with in the future because I enjoyed both. So I think I'm probably ending at a 4.5 stars. I was actually leaning towards a 4-star, and then the way everything got wrapped up amped it up a little bit. So finished this in a day and then jumped right over to my next book that I pulled from my jar, which is River Sing Me Home. And currently, how far am I into this? I'm about 50 pages in, so I've made a little bit of a dent. It is a slower moving book than I expected, considering what the plot is. This is historical fiction. Unlike the first book in this video, this is actually historical fiction. So the story of this, it takes place in Barbados. So this woman, Rachel, is on the run, which, by the way, I've read historical fiction during slavery in the US. I've never thought about the fact that when you're on an island like Barbados, it's such a contained area that being on the run means so much more, and it's very different, and like it almost feels more trapped because there's literally nothing to run to except for ocean. So anyway, we have Rachel. Rachel's on the run, and through her years of being enslaved, she has had many children. I think she said 11, not all of which made it. Obviously, there's disease and hardship and everything else that took the lives of some of her children, but Several have made it and have since been taken away from her. So now Rachel is on the run and she is looking for her children. And she's looking to reconnect. For many of them, it's been years. And already she has found one of her children named Mary Grace. And it's really interesting because Mary Grace hasn't spoken ever, according to the people that now she's with. She's just completely mute. In fact, they didn't know her name was Mary Grace. They were calling her by something else because they just had to pick up a name. So really sad stuff in here. But now that I'm in 50 pages in or so, it's less about the trauma of the separation and more about the resilience of finding them again. I've been enjoying it so far. It is a very slow read. I hate to say this, but I've kind of been like forcing myself to pick it up. I might actually go see if my library has this available on audiobook and switch over to audiobook and see if maybe that pulls me in more. But I don't know. We'll see how the rest of this one goes. So it is now the weekend, and I have been reading River Sing Me Home. I'm on chapter 35. I have about 50 pages left. So we're going to finish this up on this very rainy, yucky day. This book is heart-wrenching. So I shared before that she is meeting and finding all of her children that had been taken away from her while she was in slavery. And that is the whole plot of this book. But every single child of hers has gone in many different directions, including other islands. So there's traveling across water and treacherous journeys. There's a lot of talk of like finding your own freedom within this messed up world. And everyone kind of finds that level of freedom in a different way. So she's on a journey. I think she's on her last child that she is trying to reconnect with. We're going to finish reading it and then I'll update you on this rainy, rainy day. Let's go. This book could be so heart-wrenching. So she is watching her daughter get whipped and also having memories of her daughter watching her get whipped years ago. And so it's like this message of full circle, but full circle in the sense that like nothing has changed or gotten better. Oh, this is heart-wrenching. So I did it. I finished River Sing Me Home. Wow. I'm not gonna rate it yet. I feel like I need to sleep on this one. It's gonna be high. Right now I'm thinking like 4 stars, maybe. It's just, this is one of these books that's just, it's powerful. But when I read historical fiction books that push my comfort zone, like I feel good afterwards because I feel like I've learned something that I didn't know before. And this definitely hits that. The way Eleanor Shearer talks about this issue, the issues in this book are so poetic. So one of these lines, now it's written with dialect, so keep that in mind. "This is why me don't like to do it," Thomas said in his low voice. "Think about the past. The memory's too painful. The hope hurt. All me want to do is live life in front of me because it's a miracle me make it here." Like, hope hurt? Oh, that just tugs. That tugs. What was it? There was another one that got me. "Freedom is what we've wanted for so long. Freedom means stepping out of the plantation boundary. But what then? It can be hard to live after freedom. Think we have all known the gap between what is real and what is imagined, don't you?" It's just, oh, it's so beautiful. It's just, the writing is beautiful. The story is beautiful. And then at the very end, the author actually talks about kind of her process in writing this and the ties that comes directly from her because she has ties to St. Lucia, which is in the Caribbean, and has family members that can relate to a lot of these stories that are being shared. This is honestly one of these books where the author's note just kind of made me go, oh my God. Because she actually shares in this whole story is about reconnecting family. And then while the author was in the Caribbean researching for this book, some man recognizes her and kind of is like, your face features are similar. Let me go get this other guy. And she pulls out this other guy working in this place. And sure enough, they are actually related. through distant relatives. And I'm just, it makes you really step back and think to like not know who your family is and where they are. And just, I mean, the pain of it in the past must have been real, but the pain of it even today, it's just, this book definitely out of the comfort zone. I'm very glad I read it, but also I'm really, really in the mood for something lighthearted now because, woo, that was a good one. I got one final book for this challenge. It's In 5 Years. This came out in 2020. It has been on my TBR so long, I don't even remember anything about it except being excited for it. You know what? I'm not going to read the blurb. We're just going to dive in. I don't even know what genre this book is right now. So we'll dive in. I am grateful that my last one is a shorter one, and I'm going to take advantage of this still rainy, yucky day and curl up with my puppy, yes you, and read a little bit. Hopefully this one is not depressing. That's all we'll say about that one. All right, let's go. What are you doing? Okay. Okay, lay down. Can you lay down? So I've just started In 5 Years. I'm about 40 pages in, and it's early for an update, but getting 5-star vibes. So this book, I told you guys when I picked it up, it's been on my TBR for so long, I didn't even remember what genre it was. I can now tell you it's romance, although very literary fiction-esque romance. So you start out by meeting Danny, and Danny is in line to have the best day of her life. She is interviewing for a job that goes perfectly, and it has been her dream job since she was a little kid at a certain law firm that she's always had her eyes on. And she has the job, she gets engaged, she's in love, yada, yada, yada. So they get back from celebrating at the restaurant after having several drinks, and she passes out in bed. And when she wakes up, she's in a different apartment with a different dress on, and twist, different man. And she learns that it has been 5 years. And for some reason, she is now with this other man, and she doesn't know why, what's going on. She feels crazy. She doesn't know who to talk to, but she feels the vibes with this man. So she's just like, hey, let's go for it. So this is all within these first 40 pages. And then she wakes up the next day. So now she's back in her original timeline with her original boyfriend, and also sitting here wait, what just happened? Who was this other guy? Was that a dream? My goodness, it felt real. What do I do? Where do I go from here? So that's where we're at right now. It's not a long book, so I'm guessing I will finish it today and update you then. We'll see. But before I go, we have a very important mother moment, which is we're going to bring our boys to the movie theaters. But here's the fun thing. We're going to see Dogman. And for the first time in my 8-year-old's life, he is going to be able to tell me, was the book better? Or was the movie better? Because he is a huge, huge Dogman book fan. He's read every book multiple times. And now the movie's in theaters, so we're going to go find out, is the book better than the movie or not? And then I'll be reading more of this.
I'm going to see Dogman.
Was the book better than the movie?
Yeah.
The book was better? I am so glad I ended on this one because, whoa. So, easy 5 stars. What's interesting is I had the 5-star prediction, and then, it kind of went downhill, and I was like, oh, it's not a 5-star book. And then, the true meaning of the book came out, and I was just like, oh my goodness. There were tears. Earlier, I said this is romance. It's not. It's literary fiction. This is not romance at all. There is a backdrop of a romantic story. So where I left you off, Danny had just got engaged, but then she had this dream that felt really real, and it was 5 years in the future, and all of a sudden she's back in the normal day, and it's now, what do I do? Because that felt weird. Well, things get weirder because the guy in the dream actually appears 4.5-ish years later and is dating her best friend. And so part of her is freaking out because she's like, I can't be with someone that's with my best friend. What the story is about is it is about these two girls' friendship and what that looks like when life gets hard. I tell you, this is going to be an author I look for in the future now because I'm almost at a loss for words on this one. It felt so good and sad and awful and real. And so a week ago, we pulled 4 books out of here, and I have now read all 4 of them. For the most part, I'm very happy I did this because I have a lot of books that have been sitting on my shelf for quite some time that I haven't read, and somehow I managed with 2 4-stars and a 5-star. So the one big flop from the book was All Our Shimmering Skies. This was historical fiction-ish. This was not a win. Then we jumped into Drowning, which is a 4-star action-packed, beginning to the end, read it in almost a day because it was so action-packed book. And then you had River Sing Me Home, which was just powerful and meaningful and may not have been my most favorite read ever, but it's one of those books that, like, reflecting back, I'm glad I read it. I vacation a lot in the Caribbean, and I felt like this book really helped me understand some of the history and heritage and what happened there many, many years ago. So I'm glad I read it. This was another 4-star. And then we ended with a bang. 5-star, 5 years. So all in all, my little TBR picks did me well. We will be doing this again in the very near future because I probably have some other treasures on these shelves that I haven't read yet and are waiting for me to read. So we'll get back to that soon.